Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Looks like we have three attendees so far. I know we have a few more coming. I'd like to introduce and welcome NDP candidate Susie Chant for North Vancouver Seymour riding. We're so happy to have her with us this morning to learn a little bit more about the NDP platform, Susie's vision for North Vancouver Seymour, and kind of what the plan is for students. So we have this as a webinar view right now, so we are going to promote all the attendees to panelists, so you will be able to talk and won't be muted. So there will be a brief disconnection, so just bear with us while that happens. But we're going to get our technician to do that right now, so you should all reappear. There we go. Okay, I think we got everyone in. Awesome. Susie, I might just hand it right over to you to start us off if you want to kind of give a little introduction and introduce yourself and kind of what your plans are for North Van Seymour. Then I think we'll just jump into an open round of discussion and questions. Does that sound good to you? I think you're still muted. Just
I think I am still muted. Sorry about that, folks. Good morning. My name is Susie Chant. I live in Lynn Valley, and I am your NDP candidate for the North Vancouver Seymour area. Good morning to Josh, I've already met, and Mike, John in the background. Thank you. Emily, Grace, and Lori. Hi there. Pleased to meet everybody. I've lived in Lynn Valley since 1988. I have kids that have gone to school here at Lynn Valley Elementary and Argyle. I am a nurse by trade. I've been working with Vancouver Coastal Health on the North Shore for the last, I'm afraid to say, about 20 years. The last while as a team leader with community teams. I am a member of the Naval Reserve, so I'm a member of the Canadian Armed Forces and have been since I was 17, so that's a very, very long time ago. I am looking to represent North Vancouver Seymour because I feel it is a way for me to get engaged in some of the things that I have looked at and gone, why are we doing this, or why aren't we doing this? So various things of that nature. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to be here today. Originally this was supposed to be in a webinar format, which meant that it was just written questions and answers. And I think that with this size of group, let's just talk. I'll do my best to field questions. I may have to say, I know nothing about that. Let me get back to you, which I will then get something back to Josh once I've had a chance to research it. And let's go. So Josh, you're our moderator. So my assumption is that we are all, as Dr. Henry puts it, kind people. If there's something that's coming up that I'm feeling not quite comfortable with, I will say, hey, what's that all about? But I don't suspect that's going to be an issue here. So there we go. That's me.
Thank you so much, Susie. That was great. Thank you. Handing it right over to our attendees. Who wants to get started with a question? Or let's see, Grace, go right ahead. I see your hand up there.
Hi, Susie. It's really nice to meet you. I'm the Vice President External at the Capilano Students Union, so I handle the government relations portfolio.
Spectacular. Glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I think my first question for you, it'll be an easy one, don't worry. What made you decide to run, and what can you do to help young people who are struggling right now?
Okay, so what made me decide to run? It's actually been part of my plan for about a decade now. So I've been working towards it through working with various federal and provincial campaigns. And it really, I've got for lack of a better word, I have a history of service, which means that even growing up, my dad was very much involved in community service. So as a kid, I was involved in a variety of projects. We started building Maplewood Flats, the bird sanctuary. We started to build down there many, many years ago. And I can remember riding in a wheelbarrow while that was being done. So I've been involved in community as a volunteer for many, many years. And that includes things like guiding Girl Guides, working with Girl Guides, That includes stuff like the Sunrun clinics. I've also been involved with the military since I was 17, with the Naval Reserves, which is also a form of federal service. And I've also worked provincially in terms of we were foster parents for a number of years. And so it's I have a history of service. My family has a history of service, and I felt that the next step in that is to work within the government environment to try to represent and to advocate and to work on things that need working on. I am a worker bee. I'm always sort of in the middle of things, not at the top of them, not at the bottom of them. I'm usually in the middle, sort of going, let's make this happen. And with my teams, for instance, with the teams I work with in Vancouver Coastal Health, the motto is when all else fails, call Susie. So that's why I got into it. Oh my goodness, where do I start with students? We get our students trained in all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and then they're working in bars, or they're working in coffee shops, or which is nothing wrong with that, but it's not their place of passion and their place of joy. That's, if you go to school, ideally you're going to somewhere where you're going to get joy and passion. You put X amount of time and money and extraordinary effort into getting a degree, a certificate, a diploma, any of those things, and you go out and it's going to be a while before you get a job. Oh, and here's a part-time job, but we're not going to pay you enough. And here's and how are you supposed to exist? Not only that, but we make things like getting somewhere to live. How about housing affordability? Come on. We've got people that are in their middle 20s and the early 30s living with their parents because they can't afford somewhere to live. What is a student straight out of school supposed to do? And I suspect, and this is an area I don't know well, but I suspect just even finding accommodation and housing as a student, when you are going to school, is not easy because the rents are so high. It makes you have to make decisions between whether you're going to eat half decently or you're going to pay rent, which to me is not a decision that is acceptable in this day of when we look around us. There is so much wealth around us. Why is it so poorly distributed? So affordable housing is a big one for me. The other one is environmental stuff. I've had the opportunity to grow up on the North Shore. I've had the opportunity to enjoy the North Shore and be part of the North Shore for many, many years. And I don't want to leave a toxic wasteland for my grandkids, that's been totally cleared and built upon or totally drained of all water I'm exaggerating, I'm exaggerating. But, our environment is so very precious, and we're not doing a real good job of being stewards. The NDP has they released a platform on Tuesday. I don't know whether you were able to access it or not, but they've made a lot of commitments within that platform towards affordable housing, towards the environment. My specific thing is health. I live and breathe health, community health, and I know that we cannot be healthy without all those other social predicators. So, if you don't have an income, it's hard to be healthy. If you don't have housing, it's hard to be healthy. If your environment is unhealthy, it's hard for you to be healthy, and so on. So through so many different things that, for me, it's just a natural step to get involved at the level where we're looking at the big picture and saying, okay, how do we do this? How do we make this work for the most amount of people? How do we work with people? My signs unfortunately say working for you. And I'm happy to work for people, no problem. But my preference is to work with, because that's how we make things work. That is effective for the people that it impacts. Because if I just make a plan and go, here's your plan, you're going to look at me and go, huh? You're nuts, right? So I'm a firm believer in working with. Does that answer your question sufficiently? Did I miss anything?
No, yeah, that definitely answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, super.
I do have another question, but I think somebody else, I'm going to ask if anybody else has a question first before I keep going.
Yeah, go ahead, Emily. I see your hand up.
Emily. I am the president at the Capilano Students Union, so I work really closely with Grace on a lot of these things. And I grew up and I've lived most of my life on the North Shore. One of the things that if anyone who lives or works or does anything on the North Shore knows that traffic is a huge problem. And as density increases in the North Shore, which I agree needs to happen, I think we need to densify our communities and develop more complete communities. But I think what I'm really interested in is how whether if the NDP has plans or if you have plans for how we're going to navigate sort of our transit infrastructure on the North Shore. If there are plans, how do we address basically, I think having more cars on the road is not a solution at this point. So what are the plans moving forward for making sure that our community can move around still and just go to work and go home and not feel stuck in traffic all the time?
Okay, thank you. I'm in an exalted company. I've got the president and the vice president. Whew, thank you. I feel honored. So I live the traffic congestion too. I work in 3 different sites, one at Lionsgate Hospital, one down on Esplanade between Timmy's and the liquor store, and one in West Vancouver. And the traffic has increased exponentially pretty much every year over the past however long. I wish I could say, oh, here's the plans for the North Shore. This is what we're going to do, and this is when it's going to be done, and this is the money we've set aside for them. I can't say that. I'm sorry. There is a number of things that are being looked at and studied and worked upon, and assessed as to whether they'd be appropriate. There's things about, question mark, twinning the Second Narrows Bridge. There's things about question mark, do we do a tunnel? There's things about question mark, do we increase the C-bus capacity? There's a number of things being looked at. Has anything been settled upon? Not to my knowledge. Okay, and I will be absolutely clear on that. One of the things I can say is that our affordable housing, if we start getting our affordable housing in place, maybe what we can do is not have as many people going to and from the shore all the time, because they're able to be working and living in their communities. Because right now, I can speak for my folks. I work with Vancouver Coastal Health Community, and we've got people that live in Maple Ridge. We have people live in Surrey. We have people living in Coquitlam. We have people living in Gibsons, Sechelt, Squamish, Whistler, and they're all coming in and out, and that's just a microcosm of the folks that come in and out of North Van on a daily basis, many of whom would love to get themselves established here and be closer to their work environment, but don't have the means to do that at this time in our current state. So I think that will address some. I also know that we're looking a lot at various methods to reduce, encourage people to get out of their cars. In terms of, bike lanes and that kind of thing. I've been pleasantly pleased to see over the last couple of years the smaller buses come in. So, we've started using the smaller buses and for either a greater frequency or to get further out into the areas, because there's a lot of areas that are underserved. So people will automatically get into their cars because it's too blessed far in the rain or the slop or whatever to get to a bus stop and then sit and wait for a bus. I understand that Uber has come in. Uber? I think it's in the shore. I'm going into places unknown here, but I've seen Uber cars on the shore. So that may be a response. This is a question of inordinate proportions. And it's another one that has many variables involved, which I am happy to be involved within a portfolio if that's what I get given, and I'll have to learn a lot, because I will absolutely acknowledge I have ridden my bike to work actually most of the summer, but I will acknowledge that I will look at my car and go, okay, I need to go from point A to point B. My car's the way I'm going to go, and that's not necessarily appropriate, but it is something, because as an example, to get downtown, it takes me 20 minutes by car. If I go by bus and all is really well, it'll take me an hour to an hour and a quarter, and then an hour and a quarter to get back. So it's not time efficient, and my time in my brain is somewhat valuable to me. Does that speak to your question? Oh,
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. And I think we have a question from Lori. So Lori, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for spending this time with us.
Absolutely.
I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Capilano Students Union. So you have a full student union panel.
Wow, look at this. What an opportunity. Yep.
Yeah. So the Capilano Student Union is putting an equity conference on just to talk about anti-racism, racism on the North Shore. And one of my questions is, how do we address issues from our Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are your constituents on the North Shore? How do we bring those voices to the table so they're actually in decision-making arenas, as opposed to just talking about their concerns on I won't say deaf ears, but
no, I hear you.
We've been listening to their stories and their concerns, and I guess I'm looking for what are the plans of action to actually make some long-lasting changes on the North Shore.
Okay, I'm gonna start with, if I was MLA and I have a magic wand to wave, okay, because that's where I have to start, because right now any of those plans are out of my control. Okay, we have a sitting MLA right now, and what I would normally do is, if this question was given to me in another realm, I would say you need to go and speak to your MLA, because those are the people that have the capacity to open those communication lines and solidify them and make them so that they mean something, as opposed to lip service. Okay, so I'm not in that position to say that right now. So what I'm going to do is go to the if I was MLA and my magic wand was working really, really well, what I would be wanting to do was to find out where those voices are and try and get them in a place where I can hear them and understand the issues effectively. I don't know if you're familiar, but we've got a very large thing going on with the military called Operation Honor. And this was started, I'm going to say 5 years ago, when the military finally said enough is enough. There is too much harmful and inappropriate sexual behavior going on. Okay, so I'm just using that as an example. And what that ended up being was a massive multi-pronged approach saying, this is enough, we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And every instance where it's even looming its ugly head, we're going to deal with it at the time. And these are the steps we're going to take. So this has been put in place, and I'm very familiar with that model. And I really, and you know, in my little heart, when I watch on what's going on in the United States, and when I hear what's going on in our own country, you know, my heart breaks, because people are people, and we're all valuable. And there is no way that one person has the right to devalue others. And there's no way that other people should feel devalued because of culture, because of ethnic background, because of skin color, or any of those other things. So what we need to do is make sure that there is a voice. It's a voice that's heard. The concerns are understood, and the concerns are acted upon in a ideally a very systematic way. Now, systematic usually means slow, and it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be slow. There are steps that can be taken almost immediately to try and help and to try and support. And part of that is exactly what you're doing, which is bringing these concerns forward. And, you know, I think, you know, if you've got concerns within your environment, I'm sure you've brought them forward to various places, and slowly but surely the tide starts to turn a bit on it. Does that speak to your question?
Yes, it does. I'm just wondering, does the NDP have a specific plan, to deal with anti-racism, or is it just by? I
actually will need to look. Okay, the platform came out on Tuesday, so I haven't memorized it. It's got so I need to find that out. So can I get back to you on that? Would that be all right, Laurie? Josh has my email. So
you can respond to Josh, even is fine, and he
okay.
can forward it to me. So thank you.
Okay, 1 sec, I'm writing. Anti-racism question addressed. in platform. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you send that right over to me, Susie, I can forward that on. That would be
No,
great.
no. I'm oh, when I get it. I don't have it right now.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm quick, but I'm not that quick.
Awesome. Next, we'll go to Grace. I think she had a follow-up question.
Very good, thank you.
Yes. So as somebody who's worked in the public service, I'm sure that you understand what's been happening to public service funding over the past 40 years and the impacts that it's had. You work in healthcare and we work in the post-secondary sector, and there's a lot of parallels when it comes to the way that both of those services, public services, have been treated due to public funding cuts. In 1979, over 90% of a post-secondary institution's budget would be publicly funded. Today, that number is 47%. And the way that universities make up that difference is by jacking up tuition rates. They don't have a choice. There's nothing they can do. That's the only other way to make money and keep their operating budgets in line. But I guess my question to you would be, as a candidate for the NDP, can we hope to see a reinvestment in public service spending? Not just a little bit, but enough to actually make a difference and kind of get out of this precarity that we've been in for such a long time.
Okay, I'm gonna steal John Horgan's words. Basically, the word he's been using is neglect. That the public services have been neglected for many, many years. And over the past 3.5 years, the NDP has been slowly but surely addressing that. And he has absolutely committed to getting public funding back to where it is needed. Now, is it going to go and move the universities from their 47% to a higher percent? I don't have that specific information at this time, but what I do know is that John Horgan and the NDP have committed to putting public money back into the public sector, and to get back to looking at what is it that is critical and important and needed in our communities and our province to have us continue to thrive at a high level. And absolutely the public sector is where that focus needs to go. The focus in the last 3 years has been over health. We haven't seen a lot of money come in, but and I'm speaking from personal experience here, haven't seen a lot of money come in, but we've seen a lot of sort of questions about some of the things that we've always been trying to do that maybe are not appropriate anymore. 40 years ago they were good, now they're not. So let's not be putting resource and time into that. Let's be putting it into something that we can use a little more effectively. And certainly with the pandemic, all eyes have gone on to health, and there's been a lot of money pumped into pandemic management, and there's nothing you can say to question that one. Having said that, the promise is there to bring money back to the public sector and to the public services that support and maintain our communities. I would absolutely think that if I'm an MLA and you were to come back to me and say, gee, only 47%, the universities are only funded at 47% now, and this is what it's forcing them to do for our students, for other students. And I know there's the other piece is foreign students who come in, and that also creates its own dynamic, because that is a revenue stream for the universities, but it creates a dynamic around access to classes. It creates all sorts of access to accommodation, etc. So it certainly is something that is committed to, promised. What is it going to look like? That's the magic question. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. What have I got? Hassan? Are you there?
Yes,
you are.
Hi.
Welcome. Glad you're here. Good morning.
Thank you so much. I've lived on the North Shore almost my entire life, so obviously it's very important to me. And as we are getting further and closer to our some of the dates that we've set for climate targets 2030, 2050, I know a lot of people in my generation are feeling increasingly anxious about climate change. The the BC NDP has, since coming into office, embraced LNG, and I'm curious as to your position on whether an LNG pipeline should go ahead or not.
So my personal position may be different from my government from the government position. Okay, I want to make that real clear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of my personal position, I am uncomfortable with that project. Okay, so that's my personal position, because I perceive that it continues to go along the trajectory of utilizing resources that are not necessarily clean, are not as clean and as effective, and that we've got other methods that we could be exploring, other technologies that we could be using to get that type of resource and get that type of support from other things. In terms of what's going on with the LNG at this point, I do not know what direction the government's going to be going once the election is complete. I can't speak to that at this time. Would you like me to ask that question and see if I can get it back to you?
Sure, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. I can forward that to Hassan as well, Susie.
Yeah, actually, Josh, I'm going to get you to do me a favor. Do you mind keeping a note of questions and then send me an email with those questions on it? I would find that very helpful.
Sure thing.
Is that okay? Super. Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? Or if you've already asked one, would you like to ask a follow-up?
Quiet silence across the board. Wow. Not used to that.
Grace, another one. Go ahead, Grace.
I have lots of questions. I always have questions.
Spectacular.
So Emily, talked about traffic on the North Shore, and I think what you said is absolutely correct. The biggest solution that we can look for is actually getting people living on the North Shore. The people who are working on the North Shore need to be able to live on the North Shore. But in particular, it goes further than that, because we're talking about affordable housing. But we have to go even further than that too, and look at how much people are making and look at who's actually coming into Vancouver to work. It's service industry workers, and they're making minimum wage, which is not a livable wage in Metro Vancouver. At this time, the NDP government is slowly increasing the minimum wage, but it's still not enough to live on. Are we going to be able to see, an actual fruition of that in the coming years should an NDP government be elected?
There's been a lot of work done around the world. It's not just in British Columbia, not just in Canada, but internationally, on what is a living wage and how do we make it so that everybody has sufficient to live within the environment and the economy that they are in, and that is a very complex question, because of course, minimum wage, if you're living in, now I'm going to use a very bad analogy, which is going to get shot. I'm going to get shot by my husband, but that's okay. My husband's family, he has family in a place in Newfoundland called La Poile that is accessible by boat only. In La Poile, minimum wage doesn't get you through a day because of the cost of transportation, because of the cost, there is no health care. My husband's cousin is a first aider, and that's what they've got in their place. They don't have a school, they've got a lot of things missing. So how do we make it equitable? And I'm using La Poile, it's out of province, but even so, if we look at some of our provincial environments, the amount of money that people need to survive on a day-to-day basis, and what does survival look like, that is such a complex question. I don't think anybody argues that minimum wage is not enough to live on. I think nobody argues that. And initially, way back in the very, very bad old days, minimum wage was the wage that was used when you first came out of high school, and in some cases elementary school, and you started working, but you were still under, and don't anybody get mad, but still under the umbrella of your parents. You were still living at home. You had housing, you had food, you had all that stuff. And what you were getting was a wage that was I'm going to say the equivalent of your allowance. Okay. Sadly, that model sort of continues because really that's what it is. It's an allowance. It's not really a wage. And as I say, there's stuff going on around the world looking at sort of a minimum income for people. So that right across the board, we're expected that everybody has a minimum income, whether it's provided by a government or whether how it's provided. That work continues. And as you say, minimum wage has come up, but we still need to figure out how to make a living income for people. And that work is absolutely still in progress and will probably continue to be in progress for many years to come. Because the solution, again, I mean, nothing is simple. Oh gosh, I wish there were simple things, but there aren't. I would tackle the simple things so fast. But there aren't simple stuff. So something like that is really challenging. I mean, it also leaks over again into here I am. I've graduated from university. I've got my degree in music. I've got my degree in criminology. I've got my degree in practical physics, but I can't get a job that even comes close to paying off my student debt, let alone allows me to live at a decent rate in a decent place where I want to be. You know, because that's the other piece is the housing issue. People are deciding where they live by what they can afford, not by where they want to be. And that's a huge turnaround from even as much as 20 years ago. It used to be you decided where you wanted to live and then you found something within that environment that you could afford. Don't have that anymore. That's not an option anymore. I have people my age in my working environment that have, moved out of the North Vancouver area because they can't find places that they can afford to live in anymore. And Lord help our seniors. So, I think it's a constant, it's an underpinning. What it's going to look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I truly hope it's better, but I don't know. Fair?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll go back to Emily for a question.
Great, thank you. So my question, I think, as somebody who's a health professional and has worked in the industry, you may be uniquely situated to shed some light on this question. We've really seen a strong response from the current government in light of COVID-19 and the crisis that we find ourselves in. But I mean, we're also in the midst of another crisis that's been going on much longer, and the overdose crisis. And, I think this is something that we really need to move away from thinking is just located in specific areas and neighborhoods in BC. It's in all of our communities. And it's something that, is taking more lives than COVID-19 actually is in BC. And I'm sure you know that as well. So what is, either the NDP looking at doing moving forward, or how would you approach the overdose crisis, should you get elected, to make sure that, we're really, it's too long and too many lives have been lost so far. So
I completely hear you, Emily. This is a very significant crisis in our world, in our entire province, and the losses have been unacceptable. We've lost far more to COVID than we've lost in any recent war. Any recent involvement we've had overseas. We've lost far more people to opiate overdose, than we have to anything else, and it's shocking. In a lot of ways, I have a very simple brain, and I go, wait a minute, this is stuff that's illegal. So why is it so prevalent, and why is it happening? Because that's just not right. And of course, my counter logical self comes back and goes, yeah, okay, right. Good effort, nice try. Now let's think about this properly. There's so much, there's a lot involved here. The first part being, where's it coming from? How do we stop distribution? Okay, so there's been task force working on that. COVID has actually amplified the problem. because the distribution lines have been interrupted due to the lockdowns related to COVID. So what's happening is that it's being cut with more toxic stuff and at a higher level. So that is really problematic as well, because if you can't stop distribution, then you got a problem. Your next phase is, it's still in the realm of criminal. So when people are doing behaviors that could lead to opioid doses, it's under the radar, so that when they run into trouble, the radar can't get to them to help. So there's some argument around decriminalizing personal use illegal drugs. Okay, I'm going to use illegal drugs as my terminology. It's not necessarily the correct one, but decriminalizing the possession of stuff for one's own use, so as to try and make it so that people will seek help, perhaps addiction help, perhaps mental health help, will seek help without feeling that they are breaking a barrier where they're liable to be prosecuted. The other piece is to look at saying to having people recognize that use of drugs is and or addiction and that kind of thing is, somebody's got a cardiac problem, we work with the cardiac problem. Somebody's got diabetes, we work with the diabetes. We look at people as individuals and we try to support and help them in the place that they're in. And that is not the way that we deal with drug use at this time. So both personally and governmentally, the goal is to start looking at the whole picture and looking at the individual to work with them. We also are short on treatment sites where people can go and be safe while they manage perhaps their addiction, mental health, drug use. There's a whole pyramid of things that are focused on this. Is it cutting down the numbers? The numbers are going down a little bit. Is that related to what's been put in place? There needs to be more put in place. It makes me cranky. I've got an naloxone kit in my car. Great, I'm a nurse. Good idea. Carry an naloxone kit. I picked it up from, who did I pick it up from? A guy that was working in the community and passing them out. So that's fine. So like a good nurse, I opened it up and looked at it. It's an ampoule that you have to break and then draw the syringe. Nobody's got those skills. Who's going to know how to do that when they're scared and they're dealing with somebody who's dying? Like, not only do you give out the kits, but you got to teach people how to use the kit. It's great to get out, but you got to go the whole way. So at this point, there's lots more to be done. There is absolutely a focus on it. It's out there. Is it being effective? I think it is. I think we've got a number of people that are alive that maybe 2 years ago wouldn't have been alive. Are we still seeing deaths? Absolutely we are. How do we bring those folks to the surface so that we can offer support and help and avoid those deaths? I think that's the critical question right now. Because, those are deaths that are still happening in somebody's bedroom, in somebody's basement suite. They're not happening in public places as much. But it still is really such a below the radar activity behavior that to get it to a point where we can actively intervene and save people is very difficult. So we have to start earlier down the line. We've got to deal with distribution, deal with figure out who it is that's cutting with the noxious substances as well, get that dealt with, and move towards decriminalizing the possession of illegal drugs for own use. Look at people taking care of themselves. Look at having people that know how to support that taking care of itself. So it's a tier-wise steps, and it's there, but we're not seeing the tide turn yet. And we haven't seen the tide turn for, 4 years now that we're losing those people? I don't know. It's a long time. Anyway, does that speak to your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. I think we'll go back to Hassan for another question.
So my question is about ICBC. Andrew Wilkinson has said that he would end the quote ICBC monopoly and open up BC to private insurance companies, as well as keep ICBC, so that if people want to continue with ICBC, they can. But if they want to shop around, they would have that option. Where do you stand on that?
Okay, I think I've lived with ICBC all my life. The travesty that has been ICBC for the last 5 years or so has been pretty awful. I know that the NDP government has actually, for a part of the population, and this does probably not apply to students, so bear with me, has managed to actually get people's rates down by about 20%. So the driving population that has a solid driving record, rates have come down for that group. I know that the rates have gone up for new drivers and learning drivers. The feeling of going out, and I'm old enough that I've been around when we had private insurers for vehicles. The challenge that I have with the private insurers is, first of all, the people that have lots of money can pay for lots of insurance if they so choose, so their coverage could be considerably more comprehensive. Also, folks that do not have a lot of money and or don't choose to have comprehensive insurance can go to a private insurer and get a very mild package, which is grand if you don't get into any kind of accident or you don't have any long-term disability from an accident, which is not grand if you have any of that happen. The other piece of this puzzle is the litigation piece. So historically, when folks have been in accidents that have long-term impacts on their lives, there has been a lot of litigation, with ICBC being on one side and the family lawyer or some kind of representative being on the other side. And an awful lot of the ICBC costs were going to managing this litigation stuff. What the government has committed to is to make it so that there is how do I best describe this? An individualized assessment for each person to determine what it is that an individual will require going forward from now, and then reassessing on a regular basis to determine what their care needs are or what their living needs are if they are not able to live as they were before the accident occurred. So what that does is that caps off on the litigation costs, which is anticipated to bring the fees down with ICBC. And again, if you go to private pay insurance, those litigation costs will always be there, and they will always be a component of the insurance that you're purchasing. So from my perspective as an individual, much as I am discouraged by ICBC on occasion, I think the overall gain of having a insurer that is, first of all, mandatory insurance in a place where we've already said their cars are us. You know, there are cars everywhere. There are accidents. We hear about critical accidents on a daily basis. And if we go to a place where people can choose to insure, or maybe we won't insure, or maybe we'll just insure at this low basis, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. So that's pretty where we're. Does that speak to your question, or is there any other pieces that I've missed?
No, that answers it. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that question, Hassan. We'll go back to Grace for another question.
Wow, you guys are hot. On fire over here. You guys are much more challenging than the Chamber of Commerce was yesterday.
Well, that decreases my confidence.
No.
Right.
No. It was a little more. Okay, never mind. I'm not even going to go there.
One of the biggest things that we focus on at the Student Union, but also in our work, in our provincial advocacy, is decolonization. I'm calling in today from the stolen lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and I work in a post-secondary setting, which is a very colonial space. There are a lot of Indigenous students who do not feel comfortable going into post-secondary, mainly because school for them is a place of intergenerational trauma. It's not meeting their needs. It doesn't have the emotional and mental safety that it needs in order to, be a welcoming environment for them. But more than that, we have to think about decolonization as in the process of bringing things together, of creating a decolonial space as something that needs to happen in all of our communities and not just post-secondary. So I guess what I would ask is, as if you were to be elected the MLA for North Vancouver Seymour, how would you go about engaging the nations whose territory your riding would be on, and doing so in a respectful and inclusive manner?
Okay, thank you. First off, harking back to my job that I was in until the 28th of September when I took leave to do this, we've actually been working very closely with Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Sault-Ste-Antlian because one of the things that has evolved, which I think is setting a bit of a model for other areas, is the First Nations now has a health authority. So I'll give you a little bit of background. Let's say I'm going to go 20 years ago. British Columbia had 52 health authorities. And they all had their own little district, and they all had their own CEO and their own, vice pres, and they all had all their people that made reasonable money. And it was expensive, and it was also, the standards were very different depending on what region you were in. We are now down to 7 health authorities, and the one that we are in right now being Vancouver Coastal Health. We are the coastal urban component of Vancouver Coastal Health, in case you were wondering. And the other thing that has developed over the last, I'm going to say 5 to 7 years, is the establishment of a First Nations health authority for exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so health is another area where the folks from the Indigenous folks, First Nations folks, feel very uncomfortable a lot of the times. Health is very intrusive. We rock right into your world and go, so what's up? What do you, and ask all sorts of questions about things you never want to talk about with anybody. And that is triple effect when you're dealing with somebody from First Nations, where that stuff's never discussed, ever. Stop. And so, it has created a real clash. And it is similar with schools. My father was a principal in the North Vancouver School District. One of the schools he was at was Lynn Valley. I used to play there when I was 6. And he was one of the first educators to be going to and this was in the 60s, and if you're familiar with the 60s Scoop, the 60s Scoop was happening then. And so he's one of the first educators that was on the North Shore that, went down and spoke to the elders and said, okay, what do we need to do to make this work for your kids? Because we want to, because the children weren't coming to school at all because it was very unsafe. There was a very good possibility that somebody was waiting on the corner to scoop them. Not happening, right? So my dad was one of the very first to be looking at trying to figure out a way to be inclusive, to be safe, to be comfortable, and that work resonates through a number of areas. And I can say that the NDP is very much including that as a piece of the groundwork, that whatever work we do, we're trying very hard to be representative of the province of British Columbia, of everyone in the province, and to recognize the various needs of everyone in the province. Decolonization is a tough hill to try. Brits, they did it all over the world. I've been very, very lucky, and God love me, I'm a royalist. I like the Queen. But having said that, I've been all over the world, and I've been in a whole variety of places where you can absolutely see. You walk in and you go, okay, Britain was here. And in some places it's been destroyed and rebuilt. In some places, it's been incorporated. In some places, it's been drastic revisions have been done, and now it is culturally appropriate and culturally sensitive. In some places, it's still a hot mess. And we're somewhere in the middle on that, I think. So I firmly believe that the NDP government, and I certainly believe for me, that this is an underpinning of everything we do. I will say that I am sometimes challenged because I'm very direct. I make eye contact, I talk to people directly and everything else, and I'm found to be offensive sometimes. And it's not with intent to offend, but it happens, and I don't get the feedback that I'm being offensive. And that's really tough, because I'm trying to figure out what's the best thing for me to be doing right now, and I need input from you to tell me that. And I don't, learning all the time. So in terms of the schools, it's a work in progress. All the school boards are expected and believed to be working towards making sure that integration of all students is important. Certainly, I mean, the NDP government was very pleased to announce, when they announced that they had candidates in 87 out of 87 ridings. 4 of our candidates are First Nations, which is spectacular. And I hope really to have that as a way of bridging as well, to learn how to bridge and learn how to effectively work with people. That all right? Work for you?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Susie, do you have time for one more question here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. You got me.
We'll hand it on for our final question, and then hear your answer, and then I think we'll wrap up.
Spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you support protected bike lanes on the North Shore?
Yes. I am the worst bike rider in the entire world, and I feel very unsafe in a lot of the places that I bike ride. So yes, I do. And I recognize that that's going to have a hatred from some people who drive and don't like it when the bike lanes are there and have made it so that drivers have less room. Too bad, so sad. And please don't quote me on that, because I'll maybe get decandidated or something. No, I absolutely support separated bike lanes. From a health and safety perspective, completely. We've got people that have lost their lives biking. We have people that have lost their livelihoods because they're biking to work and somebody takes them out. And we want to encourage people to use alternative transport that works for them. I'm always amazed by the number of people that do bike. I've got 2 people up the street from me that work at UBC, actually, and across the road from me that work like zillions of miles from here and bike to work every day. And it amazes me. I'm ultimately impressed, and I think they should be just as safe as anybody else on the roads. And that safety means that there's something between them and the cars, because the cars can kill you, and they won't even have a scratch on them maybe. But the bikes don't stand a chance if there's an interaction between cars and bikes. So yes, I support protected bike lanes.
Great, thank you. That was a good last question there. Okay, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. This has been a really informative session, I think. And Susie, thank you so much for your time and for your dedication to your candidacy and for meeting with us this morning. I think I speak for everyone that if you are the successful candidate, that we look forward to continue working with you and building a stronger relationship with you.
Delighted. Can I, Josh, can I ask just a quick question? First off, have we got something that's encouraging people to get out and vote, like for the students at
So glad you asked. Yes.
Yep,
we are running our Take It Over campaign. The Take It Over campaign is designed to inform students of the voting process, make sure that they understand how to do it, when to do it, what kind of ID they need, everything like that. But it also is designed to directly bring the concerns of students to candidates. So they can go to takeitover.ca where they can rank their top issues for the election, and their rankings will be sent to both the local candidates and the party leaders.
And when do those get sent?
They are already in the works, essentially.
Cool.
So the website might not be going to local candidates just yet, but it is going to the party leaders. Okay. So we know that that's in the works. It was mainly just a matter of we didn't know who the local candidates would be. You were only confirmed on Friday. But
no, a week ago Saturday, I promise. A week ago.
Oh, no, not you, just everybody on the candidate.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Okay. So you can look forward to hearing from more students soon.
Okay, and Josh has a direct link to me. So if there's burning questions or whatever, please feel free to send them. I will do my best to research, because some of them are going to involve research, because I'd love to say I know everything, but I don't. I'm actually quite shocked, because coming into this, I'm used to being in a position where I'm sort of the subject matter expert on a lot of things. And I've walked into a situation where I am learning all the time. And so when I get questions, I'll look at them and go, okay, let's find out somebody who knows the answer to this, which, I mean, that's probably what I'll do as an MLA too, is I'll need to, always have people to be able to reach out to and say, okay, what do we know about this? Okay, cool. Anybody else got something to add before we sign off? We good? Thank you to everybody for allowing me this opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. I've appreciated your time and your thoughtfulness. It's great. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.